So in this video I wanted to show a few things, I guess as I usually do. This might be my last video based on, like, how I've made this game, because my game is pretty much done now, and in my last video or so I've been talking about getting the game complete, and yeah, it's pretty much there now. I'm kind of waiting for music a little bit, and we'll see how that works out, if I have to maybe go to plan B on that. Hopefully not, but yeah, everything that needs to be in the game pretty much is in the game. I'm going to be doing a lot of playtesting and making sure that everything's good and I'm not missing anything anywhere and stuff like that. But over the last 2 weeks or so I've been kind of zeroing down on getting everything that needs to be in there. So pretty much all the sound effects are in. That was kind of the last real big thing that I needed to do. That's pretty much all done. During playtesting, it's sort of easy to find that, oh, I feel like I need a sound effect there or there, because it's just how it is. And so I'll see if I might have to do 1 or 2 more sound effects, but I don't think so at this point, but we'll see. Music, somebody else is doing the music, so I'm kind of waiting for that. And if that doesn't work out, because I'm putting a bit of a time limit on that, so I'm essentially going to be more waiting for that than anything else that I'm going to be working on specifically. If the music doesn't work out like that, then I'll have to find some free music, like I did for the demo, basically. As far as the actual game goes, the gameplay and all that kind of stuff, graphics, models, animation, all of that stuff, pretty happy with most of it. I've kind of I've said a few times that before in previous videos that when I finish the game, then I'll kind of look at some things. I end up calling them sort of wish list things, where I would like to do them. As I was working on the game, it was things that kind of was okay. It's just going to be a bit too much work at that point. I want to get other stuff other more important stuff finished, and so on. And so I've actually already done a few of those things, and if you've followed most of my videos, at least, you would have seen quite a decent portion of the game by now, because I've shared quite a lot, and so I guess I'll just kind of go through. So one of the major things, like at some point when I was making the game to begin with, it was going to be a much smaller game, so at some point I had to make the level bigger. As the game grew bigger, the level had to grow bigger as well, and so in the desert area I added quite a bit of stuff. I made the level easily maybe 3 times bigger in the desert section. I did this quite a while back. So one of my, I'll say, wish list things, this was quite high, if not number 1, was to also make the cave area bigger. I haven't really showed the level in any of my videos, but this is basically the level. And so the caves area, I've shown these areas. I kind of don't want to show the whole level in too much detail, so if you play the game, at least there's something there to find, even though I've shown all the areas in previous videos over the course of time. So if you've watched all my videos or most of my videos, you would have seen just about all the areas in the game, not in their entirety, but portions of them. And so the caves area originally was kind of just a means to an end, like that's where the boss was going to live, and it wasn't going to really be much more level after that, or during that, after the castle. So you go from the desert to the castle to the caves. And yeah, again, like as the game, you know, got bigger, like the caves area was something I always felt like, okay, I need to expand it. And so I did that I think maybe 2 weeks ago or something. It took me about 3 or 4 days to get that, because, you know, everything was already built, all the triggers. Let me wrong shortcut. So here we go, we've got collision up the yin yang. Just go to a top view. So we've got all this, of course, static meshes, and this is all manually built. There's no automation on this. The only thing that's kind of painted, you know, in a quick way, are these smaller rocks like these things. It's kind of done with the foliage tool, of course. You know, I mean, nobody in their right mind would go and place these things, right? But yeah, everything else is manually built, so, you know, it's not a quick decision to go and say, okay, I'm going to make this level bigger after it's already built. And then you have like the collision, like there's collision around every single, you know, piece, because these rocks, you know, I just didn't want to create any snags. And so this is, I guess in some ways this is kind of an old school way of doing it, where, you know, you would build your stuff and then you would use collision to smooth out the snags and stuff. But yeah, in this case I pretty much built everything, built all the collision manually for this whole section, and big parts of the other level as well, like on the desert sections and stuff like that. It's also a way to simplify collision, because your main model collision might be more complex than you really need, you know, especially when you build like modular pieces like this kind of stuff. Like that. Then each piece will have its own collision, and you build it up, and that's all good and well, but it's actually overkill. And so in a lot of cases I'll go in and just simplify that. So it's like, because I have to stop the player from being able to jump over things and stuff like that anyway, so I kind of build, like this is all the, you know, all the pink is actually custom built collision for all this stuff. So, you know, it's not a, making modifications to the level has like a knock-on effect where, you know, it just gets a little crazy. So it took me a few days to actually extend that piece of the level. Another thing that I really wanted to do was let's see, characters. What am I looking for? The rock boss. So this, not technically a big thing, but you know, it had an impact on a few different things. It had an impact on the blueprint, you know, the actual animation work. So I wanted to add another attack. So originally, if you've seen the video where I show how this boss works, you'll see he's got basically, it's technically one attack, but it's two animations. So it's a left swing and a right swing, and that was the attack, and he kind of just comes after you like that. And so I also wanted to do, of course, because he's got this big club hand kind of thing, and Okay, not that one. Was it attack C, attack D, attack E? Okay, here we go. Right. So I wanted to do that kind of attack where he smashes you, and that's kind of his heavier attack. The other attack, it's on a randomizer, and then the bias is towards the other two. Or did I make it 50-50? I might have made it 50-50 between the two attacks, but it might be biased towards the other two attacks, so you'll get this smash attack every now and again. So, again, a little bit of work to get that in. The animation parts are always the most difficult for me because I find animation quite difficult. That's why I have so few animations for all the characters. Let's see, the mummy soldier also has a new attack, an extra attack animations. So this is something like from day one I wanted to have the two animations, but I never made the second one, and now I finally did. So that's the one that's always been there, and this is the new one. It's just the other way. So it'll flip-flop between those two, and on the loop it'll be a little, so it's like a 1-2 and then a little bit longer wait, and then a 1-2 and then a little bit like that. So he's, because I added this attack and it's a quick follow-up to the normal attack, he's a little bit harder to deal with, which is a good thing. And it's not really timed specifically, like sometimes you'll start with this attack. Wherever the flip-flop, it's essentially just a flip-flop node, and wherever it ends, the next one plays next time. So I don't care about that too much. But if he does both in one after the other, then if it's this one then this one, it's kind of quicker. So there's a tiny bit of extra randomness to the way he attacks you, the speed of at which he attacks. So some big changes to the rock creature, the caves creature. I was okay with how he functioned before, but there were a few things that kind of bugged me about him, and the mummies kind of work in this kind of simple way because they're big groups of them, and you have to keep an eye. Like if you have a group of normal mummies and a group of the soldier mummies, or not a group but one or two soldier mummies, you kind of have to keep an eye on them because they can come in from the behind and just slash at you, and get you like that. Like there's some stuff you have to keep an eye on. You can't just stand there hitting stuff, and you have to play, if I can say it like that. And the reason why that works, like if you fight a mummy one-on-one, it's no contest. It's like whatever, just hit him and he's dead. If you fight one of the generals, the axe guys, it's these guys, they're also one-on-one. They're also kind of pushovers because you can dominate them quite easily. If they get a hit in, you can get into trouble quite easily. But if there's two of them, now all of a sudden it's a little harder. And then you add a swarm of normal mummies and you add one or two soldier mummies, it's a different story. With the rock creature, they kind of by themselves. You kind of fight them one-on-one most of the time, depending on how you deal with moving through the level and stuff like that. And so they needed to be a little bit more of a fight. Like they needed something other than hitting and getting hit. And and stuff like that. And so even though I was okay with how they felt like before, like if I was forced to keep it like that, I would be okay with it. I felt like a big wish list thing was to update their behavior just a little bit. It's not even in there. So this was basically a blueprint thing mostly. I'm gonna open up this thing's blueprint. It's basically the enemy's blueprint, and it's gonna look like, you know, I went through a hurricane, but this is kind of what, you know, the thing is. This is basically what this blueprint looks like. Is normally I would do something and try and make it work, and then I'll try and make it better, and then I'll try and make it clean, like a clean version of it. And this is essentially the made better version, and I never cleaned it up. And you know, all that stuff takes time, and I just felt like, you know, it's time better spent, you know, somewhere else. And you know, the funny thing is, I like to clean it up because if I come back to it, then it's easier to deal with. And I was like, yeah, this is it, right? I'm never gonna come back to it. And here we go. I came back to it, and you know, I had to deal with it again in this state, and it's not great. But anyway, I was able to make it work. So, so actually, very simple addition, but it. I did tweak some other stuff as well, so let me just go over the tweaks a little bit. So if you've watched my video on this creature, he you know, he needs to be able to jump up things and jump down things and all that kind of stuff. And so I added a little tweak where he won't just sort of, you know, as he's kind of attacking you, sometimes, you know, the way the thing was set up, sometimes when he's attacking you and he just kind of, if you just run away a little bit and he starts following you, like you immediately just, you know, like jump up a place or something, because he starts scanning for jumpable areas, and if he finds one, he'll jump there. So I just tweaked how that works a little bit. Put it on a timer where if he's busy fighting you, then based on when he stops fighting, there'll be a timer that runs out, and then he can jump up and stuff like that. So there will be cases where he hesitates a little bit extra to jump up, but there will be way less cases of him just sort of randomly jumping up on a place. And then also I reined in the sort of the scannable area for navigation mesh, because sometimes he'll jump where he's not supposed to jump, and I think, and it's difficult sometimes to find a problem like that, but I think that was down to because I trace for an area, and then I search for the navigation mesh within a radius, and or within a cube or whatever it does, and I think that was a little too big, and it found like the edge of, you know, like the mesh is there. The mesh might pop in soon. Sometimes it doesn't want to, sometimes it pops in, sometimes it doesn't want to. I might have to actually. Anyway, we'll see if it pops in as I go. And sometimes I think the trace hits in some unusable area close to the navigation mesh on the edge, and then that so I use this node project point to navigation, you know, and that projection then hits the navigation, but it's actually a false hit because the trace wasn't even on the navigation mesh to begin with. So what I added to him was a block, so he can actually randomly, at whenever the thing kicks in, he can block the player. And that's something I've wanted to do for quite a while, and so this was one of my also kind of high wish list kind of things. I was gonna add enemies with shields and stuff, and then you can block and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, the game kind of, stuff like that just went into the backlog, basically the never to be done log, to be honest. But anyway, so for this enemy, because you fight them one on one, he really kind of needed it, and it's got a bit of randomness to it. So as the attack comes in, I just check the damage amount. So he can only block your normal attacks. He can't block your heavy moves, your special moves, your jumping attack moves, your finisher moves and stuff like that. He can't block those. He can only block your normal attack moves. And the way I check that is just by damage amount. So my normal attacks, I think, is a damage of 10, and the next one up, which is a jump attack or something, is 20. So I just go and I check less than 15 on that, and so this way he can only react or block, those specific attacks. And pretty much all I do is I just kind of, he goes into the block state, so now he's blocking, so I stop his attacking and all his other behaviors and stuff, and I go into the AI controller and I I think that's just a thing that I put on the AI tick, so the AI can't tick anymore. And yeah, so the reset is on a timer. So once he starts blocking, he's gonna sit there blocking until one of two things happen, or one of three things really, actually. The first major one is if you keep attacking him, you're gonna react. You're gonna essentially hit a brick wall. At that point, you're gonna stagger back, and the enemy's gonna come back to life and attack you. So immediately, that will bring him back out of the block state. The other one is the timer. So when the timer runs out, which is 5 seconds, if you just stand there and he just sits there blocking, he's going to sit there for about 5 seconds and then start attacking you again. And the other one is if you run away, if you run a certain distance away from him, then he'll come back to life, get back out of the blocking state and come after you again. And yeah, so the way that actually plays out is you can sort of get caught out by it, because it's a very quick thing that happens. There isn't a warning for it. Essentially the warning is once you've hit him and he goes into the block state, he'll crawl into a little ball and just expose the rocks from his back, and so he just does this and he just sits there, and as soon as this happens, if you hit him again, you're going to stagger, and then he's gonna have a possible opening to attack you. And yeah, so that's pretty much the only way you can tell. So if you keep an eye on him, and you have to keep a very close eye on him, if you can catch that block, then you can stop attacking and then either do a heavy attack, one of the jumping attack moves or special moves or anything like that, and then keep going, or you have to kind of judge it like, okay, did I do enough combo to do the finisher? You know, am I going to take the chance to get the more you know, the stronger finisher, or am I just going to take the finisher now because he might block at any moment? It's sort of a random thing. So it's a random number generator, and then it's biased towards not blocking, obviously. There's a very small percentage chance of it blocking, but it's based on how many times he gets hit, and you'll hit him quite a few times to get your combo going, and so there's a chance that he's gonna block there. So that brings quite a big change to how this thing plays, and so the biggest problem I had with this character is pretty much that he was sort of easy to just kind of sit there and combo him and just keep comboing him. And I did implement a combo stop to the player, so you can't combo indefinitely. You have to do the finisher at some point, but still you combo finish, and this guy hardly ever gets a chance unless there's more than one thing to deal with. You know, he's not that, you know, he wasn't that sort of difficult. So you see there, sometimes you can get quite a long combo in there and no problems. Sometimes he'll just block you right off the bat, or whatever, you know. So obviously there was some of the debug stuff in there, the traces for the jump and all that, but another thing I actually just remembered that I did, which I'll show off now, is I gave the jump, I kind of figured out a way, which I guess is also, it's one of those things that's kind of maybe obvious, but I didn't think of it when I did it. As a lot of these things happen, you know, I just don't think of it when I do it, and then later on I'm like, oh, why didn't I do this? So when he jumps up the thing, or when he jumps up any ledge or anything, before I pretty much just go, and he's standing down here, let's say, and he scans and he finds a point there, I just basically have a manual move from this point to this point, and it's linear, it goes, and he just kind of moves there. And the only thing I changed over time was the speed, so he kind of gets off a quick start and then finish a little bit slower, and then you know, so it kind of goes linear and then ramps down as he lands. But what I did was so that's so the curve, you know, for that was kind of like that, like a shallow J kind of curve. And so what I did was I added a curve just to the Z value, so over time that Z value will ramp up and then back down, and so that just naturally creates a jumping curve like that, just on the Z value as he moves through time, you know. So it's a second curve that controls that, and it looks like this. So I did modify this curve a little bit, so the original curve was a little bit more straight and then it evened out there. So I just flattened it a little bit, make it a bit softer so that the jump feels a little bit better, and then the actual Z value, you know, curves like that, which is a typical I guess you call it a parabolic arc, where it's like if you're bouncing a ball or whatever, the curve would look like this. And it just sets, so the you know, doing the location is just a lerp value between two values, the start point and the end point. And so on the Z value, I just use that arc value, that Z value, and multiply it by however high I want to have I can make this however high I want to. I kept it as a static value because it seems to work okay. But that can be different heights based on different lengths and stuff like that. But so now he actually just by doing that simple thing, he actually has a much let me just do this. So he actually has a much cleaner curve or cleaner arc when he jumps. It's not so harsh. So you see that, like, he actually jumps up and then he falls down like that. Much better. Like that. Much better. Right. Very cool. Such a simple thing, but makes such a big difference in just how it feels, how it looks. So before it would have just been linear and not look as good. Yeah, so that curve is still kind of flat. I can make him jump higher and stuff like that, but I think that looks pretty decent. So that's the enemies. Okay, so I'll show one more thing real quick for the enemies. So I added, just for the normal attack, I added that push there. So originally they would just kind of sag down and fall forward a little bit, and that was because originally I just played a little bit of an animation and then, you know, kicked in the physics, and it kind of worked okay, but yeah, it wasn't great. I could have probably done a better animation, but what I ended up doing was just added actual, so I kick in the physics immediately and then push back the thing with a force. What is the thing called? I use a torque to kind of rotate the body a little bit, because for the sake of the rock creature, because his body leans forward naturally, and so to get him to actually fall backwards was required a bit of extra. So I add a torque, and that will kind of pull on the chest backwards, and then also push with an impulse there. That's what it's called. I always forget what it's called. So add impulse and just push back on on the local X there, push the enemies back. So that feels much better. Like the end, like if you don't do a finisher and you don't cut the guy in half, it always felt so weak, because they just kind of like fell down in place and never got pushed back. But yeah, so fix that. I I think that's all the enemy stuff. So I also made a little... I also added some stuff to the menu, which I'll show quickly. Yeah, I actually I was like ran it a few times and I forgot. So I also added that initial invincibility you know, those initial invincibility, so as you spawn in you're invincible for a few seconds, and then, you know, that's what that blue is. So it's a visual thing, you don't have to guess like how long you're invincible. And so in the menu I decided, because originally I had in this area of the pause menu I showed the controls for the game, and I took that out instead to add the skins, and so I had to add that back in. I also changed that now to be main menu, so it's no longer restart game, it's now, you know, you can now go back to the main menu instead. Anyway, so go to settings, and then in settings, so a few things. I added the lock to 30 frames. So even though that's probably the last thing anybody wants to do, I just added it as an option. It's obviously it will be disabled by default, but if it didn't bother you to play at 30 FPS and you'd rather go like full resolution and your computer couldn't handle that at 60 FPS, then I added the lock to 30, because otherwise it's gonna VSync and it's gonna jump, you know, between 30 and 60, and nobody wants that. And then of course you can disable VSyncs as well if you wanted to. You know, it's preferred to be on, but like, you know, or it's recommended to be on, especially for a side scroller. But the options are there, you can switch on and off whatever you like. And then I've got the player controls there. So this is my old day one player control. You can see how old this game, how long I've been working on this game. I'm still using the Xbox 360 controller. This was before the Xbox One even came out. I started working on this back in the UDK, you know, Unreal Engine 3. But yeah, so now you can see the controls at least again. Yeah, that's pretty much all I did for that stuff. What else have I done? I think that's most of it. So some of the things that I've spoken about before that I said that I might do when the game is done and I feel like I can add stuff to it, is doing more animations for the player. That's one of the things I think I've ended up deciding against doing. It's something that's, number one, it's all animation, and it's just difficult and a lot of work and a lot of pain to do it, and it's not going to make the game any better. And like all these other changes I've made, has direct impact on the game. It makes the game better in the sense that it plays out a little less basic, and, you know, in some cases makes it a little bit more difficult and stuff like that. And that's much better, that's much more valuable to me to work on than, you know, some extra animations on the player, which actually will have zero impact on the gameplay. And so I've kind of decided against that. You know, if something like that made that nobody likes the game, then, you know, I'll be wrong on that, but it's one of those things, I guess. Yeah, I mean, otherwise I'm quite happy with how things are turning out, or how things have turned out. I have to you know, since the game is kind of done at this point, I can't say anymore how it is turning out. It's pretty much what it's gonna be. Yeah, so I'll play a little section. Oh yeah, so while I'm looking at it, so I've also changed the HUD a little bit. So it's still the same HUD, but it's tweaked a little bit. So you can see now the black border will now go all the way to the edges of the screen. Originally my thinking was I want to see as much of the original screen as possible, but it looked it was a little bit weird. I didn't really like it, and I softened the edge of it. So it just looks a little bit better like that. And then I've also brought down the opacity of the thing down to about 60%, so it's not as sharp. So right now it's a little, because it's in the window, you see the window border and stuff like that, but when it's full screen and you see the thing, and it pretty much, it kind of stands out like a sore thumb, which I don't really like that much. You should only clearly see the parts that is of note, and so you can clearly see the green line for your health. You don't even have to look at it, you can just see it in your peripherals. And then also the 3 dots for your 3 lives, and you can easily see when you get less or more. And the same at the bottom line will be much more visible when you charge up your sword, and the same goes for the lives. You know, collecting the ninja star bits to get more lives. So there, the pushback much better. So I've got obviously still some debug stuff popping up on the screen. I've also tweaked a little bit the way the fogging and stuff works, because you know, for the detail levels, I'll look at that stuff just now. Should actually switch off that cone, that capsule there. That's a sphere trace that I do. Basically, I probably would have talked about this a long time ago, but you know, basically what that sphere trace does, that red one that you see popping up, that checks for walls. So when you run and jump, you do a forward somersault. When you stand still, you do a straight up, but it's a higher jump. You jump higher this way, and you jump further this way. So when you're running at a wall, you don't want to do the long jump, you want to do the high jump. So the trace catches the wall and it forces the high jump instead of the long jump, like that one. So you see, that's what that is. Break that wall. So something I pretty much forgot about, but I took a look at a little bit again, was the detail levels. So even though it's recommended that when you run the game, if you have any frame rate issues, the first thing you do when you're running in full screen, this is going to be screen percentage, and the first thing you do is you pop down the percentage, and I might default it down a little bit lower to begin with. Instead of 100%, because I am using the upscaler, and it actually works quite well. You can go down all the way to 50% on a 4K, and on my screen, which isn't big, it's a 27-inch 4K screen, so it's quite hard to really notice big, kind of, I guess, small differences like that, but it's hardly noticeable between 50% and 100% screen percentage. But yeah, performance is way better, and I've got a 1080 GeForce 1080 in my computer, and 4K is a little bit much for this game because I'm using the volumetric fogging and all that kind of stuff, real-time lighting and all that. It's quite harsh on the GPU, so yeah, so so the first thing that's recommended is to put down your screen percentage. It's going to have a very small impact on the image quality, and the game will still look really good. And then if you go like 50% screen percentage and the thing's still, if you're GPU limited, if you're CPU limited, CPU load should be quite low on this game. But if for some reason you're CPU limited, that is what it is. GPU limits, you can tweak it down a little bit. So medium quality will still look pretty decent. You still get volumetric fog. The shadow detail is gonna get lost much sooner on medium quality. You can see there the blurry shadow comes in much quicker, and there's some small differences in the way that the lighting looks and stuff like that. But medium quality, still not too bad. It's still, looks decent. And if you go to low quality, now we're gonna lose volumetrics and all that. And I think it did a little bit of a quick shader compile there, that's why it took a little bit longer. In the final compiled game, it's also pretty much instant. But you can already see, like, now the fogging looks very different. So I had to tweak things quite a bit to get the low quality to fit in and still look like the same game, but you can see how different it looks now. So that's highly, like, not recommended. Unless you absolutely don't have a choice. You can see the shadows are not great and stuff like that, but I mean, that's the point, right? It's like that's how things are. But it still looks like a game that, it still looks okay, I guess, for what it is, for the quality levels and stuff like that. If you're playing on like a little notebook screen or something, maybe it won't be that big of a deal. But yeah, so I had to tweak a few things to get all these to at least somewhat feel like the high and medium quality are very close. The biggest difference is in the shadow, and then you'll notice a little difference in the lighting and stuff like that, but it's the low quality one is the one that, so you can see now, looks much nicer, much cleaner, obviously, and the volumetrics makes a massive difference in the look of the game. I would like to keep that on the low quality, but I guess that would lose the point of having a low quality setting to begin with. So yeah, definitely the resolution, the screen percentage is the important little tweak there to get GPU performance, up on, especially on 4K screens. Like if you're running your computer on a 4K screen and you run this game and you don't have a high-end graphics card, I mean, you would consider a GeForce 1080 to be a high-end card just a year ago or something like that. And it's not really good enough, just because of all the lighting features that I use in the game to actually run a smooth 60 on there. I can get away with 70% or so screen percentage. I think I increment them on 5s, so you can go 5% incrementations and find the sweet spot for, you know, resolution, you know, for screen percentage. If you have to go down below 100%, that is, which isn't that bad because the upscaler in Unreal is extremely good. I mean, I don't notice it on my screen really at all. Maybe on a big 60, 65 inch whatever TV you'll notice it, but yeah, I don't really notice it. Okay, so I've been rambling on now for quite a while, and I guess I need to get this video to an end. Yeah, so I basically I wanted to make one more video before the game is complete, and hopefully I'll get it out there somewhere to be sold, and it won't be very expensive because it's not a very long game. It's an arcade game. It's very heavily based on old school arcade games like Double Dragon or Final Fight, or you know, those kind of games, designed to be not like massively long or anything like that, but kind of hard in some places, and hopefully good replay value. I do have a New Game Plus feature that once you finish the game you can run New Game Plus and you can keep your upgrades and stuff, but the game does become considerably harder you know, when you do that, and so there's a bit of replay value, but just the, you know, hopefully the game just by itself has a decent replay value in it, even though it's a fairly short game, you know, in comparison to these games that you get these days that are like, you know, 50 hours and up. This is a good little palette cleanser, I guess you can call it. So yeah, before I start thinking of more stuff to say, I'll say thanks for anybody that followed my videos over the years. I almost want to say I hope this is the last video, because that means the game is complete and I don't have anything to say anymore. So yeah, thanks for watching, and yep.